Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy B-Dale. If you're new to this channel, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. But today we're going to be talking about how planetary alignment corresponds with the human body that creates the magnum opus of the interstellar vortex portal of the gate of the gods that's open with the golden key and the silver key to get to the golden gate, which is basically achieving heaven on earth. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, get your notes out because all this is correlated to quantum physics, metaphysics, and mind science technology. So you got to look at the esoteric aspects of it, right? So as I was telling you before, all this is correlated by way of quantum physics, metaphysics, mind science technology. Because one thing you got to understand about planetary alignment, it basically enhances the flow of cosmic energy. Because when you have planets amalgamated together and they're basically copulating, it basically creates a fraction of light based on lunar wave frequencies that is extracted from the moon, basically, because the moon is basically the personification of the silver key. The silver key is only conjoined with the material plane, which is known as the demiurge, right? So when you have the squaring of the circle is basically the sun and the moon basically working in conjunction that creates a form of a reset of the cosmic egg, right? So in January 2025, you got 6 planets will align in the night sky with a 7th joining later for a rare cosmic show. So this cosmic convergence creates a planetary parade. So you're going to have 2 different planetary alignments that's basically going to be taking place. You're going to have one in January and you're going to have one in February. Now, the one on January, I've seen different publications. They said it's going to be on January 21st, and you got some that says it's going to happen on January 25th. So in between January 21st to the 25th, that is the activation of the golden key, which is acclimated to Libra. And February planetary alignment on the 28th is acclimated to the silver key, right? And the silver key is basically in alignment with the material plane. So when you have the merging of these energies of the silver key and the golden key, it basically is in alignment with everything that the Pope just did, right? Because one thing you got to understand, when you break down the etymological roots of the word Babylon, it means the gate of the gods. So those keys that the Pope used to unlock those 5 portals were basically in alignment with the gate of the gods that's in alignment with this planetary alignment that's going to be taking place on January and February, right? Now, it tells you right here on January 21st, the inhabitants of Earth will be able to see 6 planets and maybe 7 on this day. And on February 28th, you got 7 planets of the solar system that's going to be in alignment, right? Because like I said, the lunar waves of frequency waves is basically operated on the refractions of light. It operates on the lunar frequency waves, right? Because it basically opens up the gate of the gods. That energy right there is the silver key. Now, this is basically an intuitive breakdown of what I'm basically talking about when it comes to the blueprint of the gate of the gods. So you got the golden key, which is basically personified as the sun, and that planetary alignment from January 21st to the 25th. And then you got the silver key, which is basically the personification of the moon that is equated to the material plane that works in conjunction with the holographic projection of the rings of Saturn on February 28th of the planetary alignment. So one thing you got to understand about the silver key and the golden key, it is basically the intersection between the golden age, which is Libra, and Aries, which is personified as the silver age, which is the age of darkness and the age of deception. Because, like I said, this is all correlated to the precessional circle of the equinox. Because the age of Pisces, Aries, and Taurus, that was basically the age of mankind, which is basically the clay age. Because mankind is a kind of a man that was genetically spliced in 4086 BC on the island of Patmos that created this artificial caste system that they got the edification from the archons, that's basically correlated to Mount Olympus. When we get into this, right, it's all esoterically connected. So the intersection between Libra, golden age, and Aries, silver age, the age of darkness and deception, was basically in alignment with Ophiuchus, known as the Golden Gate of heaven, because Ophiuchus, when you understand the metaphysics of it, is basically in alignment with Jesus walking on water, right? So the galactic center lies visually from our solar system along a line that passes through the Golden Gate. The constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, sits at 180 degrees of Orion. Ophiuchus and Orion is basically a representation of the cycle of life, right? To where energy expands and returns to itself, which is alpha and omega, which is equated to the number 19, right? Because one thing you got to understand about the number 9, we already know that it's basically in alignment with completion and finality of a system as we get through the Golden Gate, which is basically personified as the gate of the gods, the energy and the restoration process of Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus and Orion represents the cycle of life that is basically in alignment with incarnation of earthly beings that go from the gate of man to eternal beings through the gate of the gods. So it's basically a transmutation process. As I was telling you in my last video, you got to go from neophyte, adept to master. So once you master yourself, you become an Ethereum, which is an eternal being, and you go through the gate of the gods. So this is why I said when you look at the precessional circle of the equinox, it operates on 6,000 year increments, right? And that basically equates to 24,000 years, a bifurcation period, to where that basically denotes the fact that this is the last reincarnation cycle. With the sun's alignment with the galactic center on the winter solstice that just took place on the 21st, then the sun will be in alignment of the sign of Ophiuchus, the serpent holder. This represents mankind crossing over back to the golden gates of the gods, the higher consciousness. The serpent bearer is represented as Ophiuchus, 12 disciples plus Christ equals the 13 zodiac wheel, right? So this is also in alignment. Like I said, it's in alignment with mind, science, technology, because it works in tandem with the mental plane when you're talking about Mount Olympus. Everything that you got to understand about is not to the point where, you know, the thing about westernized society and European mythology, when you're talking about biblical context, a lot of this stuff, they want you to see it from a three-dimensional standpoint when it's really esoteric, right? Because it's all talking about the unification of the left brain and the right brain coming together that creates a tetrahedron that has a Tesla angular radiation, and that radiation works in tandem with the 7 rays that's extracted from the 7 planets that's in alignment with January 21st and the 25th, right? And February 28th. So these planetary alignments is basically unlocking the scroll of all, which is your tablets of destiny, which is basically your infinity gauntlet. That is your reset. Your reset is open by way of the golden key and the silver key to get to the golden gate, which is the golden age, the apex of the golden age when we're in solar cycle 25, right? Now, like I said, the golden gate is Christ walking on water, which is Ophiuchus, right? Which is the gate of man. When you transmutate from the gate of man to the gate of consciousness, which is the mental plane that is operated by way of the magnetosphere, which is the realm of Theos or El Elyon El, which is comprised of Sirius A and B amalgamated with the Orion star constellation, right? So that is when you're talking about the galactical plane. So Dr. York was right? This is one of the last pictures that he took way before they put him in that maximum prison for 75 years. So to my left, which we see my cursor right here, this is what you see is the personification of Libra and Aries. So Libra and Aries is basically personified as the Golden Gate and the silver gate, or the golden key and the silver key in the middle that represents the galactic center, which is the energy of Ophiuchus, which is basically personified as the restoration process of the rebirth of Christ, which is in alignment with Osiris, right? So Dr. York, this was basically a esoteric codex that he was basically propagating, because Libra and Aries, right, is basically personified as a reset. And a reset operates by the laws of Mayat, because Mayat is basically the wife of Tahuti, and Tahuti is basically the Christ energy that sits within the energetic frequency of your soul, right? Meaning that the heart chakra that's associated with Tahuti and Mercury operates by way of magnetism when you're in alignment with the 7 planets during these times of the planetary alignments. That's basically going to open up the golden gate within you and within the universe that connects you to the space-time continuum, right? Which is activated by the Kundalini serpent fire, the restoration process of the mind. So with that being said, this is, when you're looking at this picture, you're looking at this picture right here, basically, right? When you understand the Masonic tracing board, right? Which is also in alignment with the golden key. So when you're looking at these keys right here, where my cursor is at, the golden key and the silver key, that is what Dr. York is basically holding in his hand. He was basically telling us that we're almost at the galactic center, to where the golden gate is going to be open, and that is going to be in alignment with, the 7-year tribulation period that's in alignment with all these planetary alignments that I was telling you guys about, from January 21st to the 25th and February 28th. Golden key, silver key, to open up the golden gate. That's what the Pope was basically doing, right? Because when you break down the gate of the gods, it equates to Babylon. So the gate of the gods was unlocked by the Pope, because he has to propagate this new planetary alignment. They have to reset some of the stuff that they actually stole from the ancient Semitic people of the Bible, who are your so-called indigenous people, or your so-called Negro, right? Or your so-called African American, or so-called black people, right? So that's what the restoration is all about. These keys was unlocking the galactic center for the restoration process, for the rebirth of the chosen ones, right? So that's why when you look at a Masonic tracing board, it's basically personified as square and a circle, which is basically pure alchemy that creates heaven on earth, which is known as the magnum opus, which is known as the great work of creation. And that great work of creation creates a gate of reincarnation and incarnation, ascension and descension, the sun and the moon, Jack and Boaz, which is basically the pillars of Freemasonry that is equated to the number 11, right? 1 and 1 is basically denoting the fact that it operates on photons. Once you get through the galactic center, that operates on the binary code system of the matrix, because the 0 is basically personified as the dark matter energy, and the 1 represents a photon. So when you go through the pillars, you go back to the energy of Ophiuchus, which is known as a serpent bearer, which is the black sun within you, right? So the Coptic keys of Freemasonry is basically the keys of the Messiah. The Messiah is the return of the Christ, right? So that's why you see these keys right here is connected to the galactic center. Ophiuchus, the restoration process. So that's why the Pope, when he was opening up those gates, those portals, it shows the same keys, right? The keys is basically a representation of Aries and Libra, right? You got to understand the symbolism, because symbolism is going to be their downfall. Symbolism is going to denote the fact that you know what time it is on the planet, because a lot of people don't understand the symbolism because they don't understand the importance of these planetary alignments that's going to be taking place on January 21st through the 25th and February 28th. They don't know that this is the golden key and the silver key to where we go through the golden gate, right? Because the number 9 represents completion, the completion of a cycle, to where we get to the gate of the gods, right? To where we basically eradicate the age of darkness and deception that was under the age of Aries, Pisces, and Taurus, right? Now, the Pope, now the same keys. This is the holy doors that was in Rome. You got the same set of keys right here. Then you got another set of keys right here when you're looking at the papal bull that contains incantations that was acclimated to the necropolis that sits at the bottom of the Vatican, right? So that's why I was saying, like, this was the key to unlock the restoration process to basically eradicate Babylon. They have to do it, right? Which is why they had the meeting in Antarctica. They got to reset the system because this is all correlated to the Greenland theory. When you're talking about magnetic north in the land of magnets, right? When you're talking about the Rupus Negra, which is known as the black, it's like a black mountain that sits in the North Pole, basically. We're going to get into that as we get through the presentation. Now, the name Babylon is Greek form is derived from the Akkadian language, which is Babalik, which translates to gate of God or gateway of the gods. Many temples were built in Babylon, including the great temple of Marduk with its associations with Zagharat. So the gate of the gods is actually Babylon that creates the magnum opus, which is a reset, right? The dragon eating his own tail was a form of a reset, right? Because alchemy, intrinsic alchemy at its full capacity denotes the fact that other dimensional realities exist, right? Because like I said, the magnum opus, which is also known as the great work, to where you achieve the status of heaven on earth in a form of a reset. And a reset is not operated by way of the eradication and the demolition process of third density. It's operated by way of the resetting of the mind that is connected to the suprachiasmatic nucleus that basically extracts out of the mind mental matrix that connects you to the holonomic brain theory, right? So, like I said, this is all correlated to the mind. This is symbolic to the Temple of Solomon, which is the soul of man, because the Tetraanger radiation of the masculine energy and the feminine energy creates a centripetal and a centrifugal that creates the seal of Solomon, which is a tetrahedron, which is also known as the sigil of Tahuti, who is the true Lord of the Bible, who is actually you, because it's operated by way of a 0 point energy that is acclimated to the heart chakra, because you got to use your emotions as a beacon of light and a catalyst to get to the apex of the golden age, right? As you have the masculine energy, left brain, right brain, merging in to create the Kundalini serpent fire of the energy of Ophiuchus in a 9-year to reset everything that was basically taught to you by way of westernized indoctrination. So you got to reset here, and the planet has to reset, meaning that your heart and your mind has to be working in tandem and harmonize with Mother Nature in order to receive the light code energies to where you tap into concentration, meditation that creates copulation, right? Or contemplation. Now, this is, like I said, reset in itself is a form of chaos and order. You can see the two triangles right here, because the merging of the body and the merging of the soul is the merging of the physical and the spiritual plane. And when you have those two energies copulating together, what happens? You get chaos. And then in the midst of that is going to be the precursor to order. But that order in itself is in alignment with the order of the universe. It's not in alignment with the order that's propagated by the Roman occupational government, right? That is trying to create a dystopia of a tyrannical technocrat system that is going to be operated by way of artificial intelligence, right? So the Golden Gate is also the representation of the binary star system of Sirius that's basically working in conjunction with the sun that creates the great year, right? And that great year is basically personified when you look at the Masonic tracing board. It is the destination of the Mason's journey to get right back to the star Polaris, which is known as the North Star. So who's to say that the North Star is not actually in, when you look at a Mercator map, I think it's called a Mercator map. When you look at a Mercator map, it's showing you magnetic north. That could be the black sun. Like I said, it's one of those things where you can't be so submerged into the physical aspects of the information. It could also be talking about the magnetic north within your neurological faculties. It could be basically in alignment with that, because we all know that we're a microcosm and a macrocosm. So that means that the sun in Sirius creates the black hole, and that black hole is actually Ophiuchus, that works in tandem with the star Polaris, to where it basically gives you the ability to take in the elements and the minerals that creates the resurrection of Osiris, right? This is all based on the Egyptian trinity that is connected to a form of nature, which is connected to the cycle of life. The cycle of life, right? Because, like I said, it's all by way of your neurological faculties. Because when you break down the etymology of the word Olympus equates to the realm of the gods. The realm of the gods is operated by way of the mind, which is the mental plane. The mental plane, that's why I said God is the highest extension of the mind, which uses the elements that matter to express itself. Once you're able to express yourself, that's when you're able to go through the golden gate to get and achieve the resurrection of Osiris. So shout out to Sister Myra. She was talking about Osiris, which is basically in alignment with the Super Bowl. So it's not a coincidence that all these synchronicities is basically syncing up, because they let you know what time it is, because it's all connected to the Orphic egg, which is the energy of Ophiuchus, which is connected to the cosmic egg. The cosmic egg is basically in alignment with the new light codes, which is basically our neutrinos. When neutrinos are basically Holy Ghost particles that basically assist us in the next step of the great shift. The old initiation being through Orion or Sirius, which is Uranus, which is known as seventh heaven, and the 1111 doorway of oneness. Like I said, 1 and 1 basically denotes the fact that it's talking about Aries and Libra. Golden key, silver key to get to the golden gate. So the doorway is actually the doorway to the gate of the gods. As the initiation of the Great Pyramid took us through the doorway of Orion, Asar, the union of opposites occurred. As the Earth and the solar system moved through the galactical plane, the axis shifts, the cosmic egg, the serpent, the energy of Ophiuchus, Kundalini, fire vibrating fully with life force creation energy, began to move to the crossover point into the higher light octaves, just like Maya, when you're talking about Mayan civilizations and Mayan culture did in their time. The opposites of the heavens in Orion, Osiris, and Ophiuchus, known as, like I said, the 13 zodiac. So this is basically the restoration of the rebirth of Christ. That's what it's basically talking about, right? So that's not a coincidence when you're talking about Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is known as the serpent, so it's not a coincidence. And when you look at this colossal coronal mass ejection, it's showing you like there's a serpent. There's a coronal mass ejection that was basically extracted from the sun that looks just like a serpent. Because, like I said, 2025 is basically known as the year of the serpent, right? In Chinese mythology. Now, this is also correlated with the constitution of man and the 7 principles of the universal substance, right? That also creates the cosmic egg, right? Which is based on the 7 gates of God consciousness, right? When you have your endocrine system in alignment along with the correspondence of the 7 planets, right? These planetary alignments that I've been telling you guys about, right? These planetary alignments on January and February. Because now, like I said, see, this is how I know I'm right. Because when you can see 6 and 7, 6, 7 equals 13 when you look at the top of this publication, that's Ophiuchus, right? This is where we're going through the Golden Gate. So Dr. York was right. Free the master teacher, right? Free Baba Yanun. So this is one thing nobody is telling you about what's taking place on the esoteric level when you're talking about these planetary alignments. Nobody's telling you about that. This is basically the activation of the golden key and the silver key. That's why the Pope had to perform the ritual. He had to perform the ritual because they got to give Big Mama her shit back. They got to give the keys up. It's an eviction notice, right? That's what's taking place, right? So The serpent kundalini feeds the ego, pineal. When the serpent's mind juice kundalini fire crosses the spark of the gap of the hypothalamus and meets the winged bird, the pineal gland, one is reborn, Ophiuchus, which represents rebirth. Rebirth, when you understand the supreme mathematical sequence of the 5% nation, the number 9 is also equated to reborn or rebirth. Just like Ophiuchus is located in the galactic center, which is in alignment with the Milky Way galaxy, right? Because one thing you got to understand about the inception of creation. Remember, I was telling you that a ball of energy was extracted from Nibiru, and they projected the black sun inside the Grand Canyon that is also in alignment with the Milky Way galaxy. The hypothalamus gland is the egg, the philosopher's stone at the mouth of the serpent at 0 point energy. Reset. That's why I said it's all resetting by way of the mind. Because, like I said, you just like you have a cosmic clock, you have a mental clock, which is the suprachiasmatic nucleus. That is a neurological clock that has to reset in order to achieve rebirth in the Christ consciousness, which is the serpent and the kundalini awakening, right? When the kundalini fire crosses and sparks the hypothalamus gland and meets the winged bird, which is known as the first eye or the pineal gland, which is people call the third eye, whatever. Now, you could say that Ophiuchus relates to the hypothalamus gland that sits in the galactic center, which is basically in the center of your brain between the left and the right, which is the true third eye connected to the reptilian and the serpent brain, the limbic system, where the pineal gland, the solar and masculine, pituitary, lunar, and feminine meet at 0 point energy. That's why I said you got to use your emotions as a navigation system. 0 point energy. Because what happens is the brainwave frequencies, when you operate at 0 point energy, it basically travels on the etheric network of the black sun, right? Because it travels on 0 point energy fields, which is a form of gamma radiation and ether. So that means that the ether and the neutrinos are basically the Holy Ghost particles to where you achieve status of the Ophiuchus, which is the Christ consciousness, Jesus walking on water, right? Amen. So that's how you break out of the lure system, which is a soul trap mechanism that is based on the square in a circle, or getting out of the square. Getting out of the square is getting out of the soul lure system of third density, because we're basically encased inside of a dome. The dome represents the square, which is amalgamated by the photon light spectrum that keeps you connected to the illusion. So this is why the gate in and gate out that's connected to the moon, because the moon is being used for soul trap mechanisms that is connected to by way of the mind. You got to reset the mind in order to get out the matrix. So these planetary alignments of January and February is basically where you have the golden gate to where, the golden gate, the silver key and the golden key of Aries and Libra, right? These energies from January planetary alignment and February planetary alignment, that is your way out, right? By way of, your mental faculties, right? Now, like I said, I'm not so much submerged into, when it comes to certain contexts and theological context, esoteric context. I'm more, I don't see things from a physical standpoint. I know that certain things, as far as in our reality, you have to see it on a physical level, but when you're talking about the galactic center, it's actually talking about us. It's talking about the upgrading of your genetics. So that is going to be the precursor to where you get the activation of, people having, telepathy, psychometry, clairvoyance, all this stuff. Now, this is all connected to the Greenland theory, right? So this is all connected to the Greenland theory. So this is why they got to give you full disclosure about extraterrestrial life. They got to do it because you got the mental plane merging in with the spiritual plane, right? And this is all connected to the Greenland theory. So I'm going to play some videos for you guys. So I told you I got a new way to show you guys videos. So we're going to get into a video here. All right. So remember, I was telling you, the golden key is basically a representation of the spiritual plane, right? That is basically the apex of solar cycle 25 that sits in Libra, right? So you got the silver key is connected to the material plane, third density. So the golden key is fifth density. So when you have these energies merged in with each other, it creates a reset. So this is why they got to give you full disclosure about extraterrestrial life, because when you have the golden gate or the golden key merging in with the silver key, this is where you get other dimensional realities of the magnum opus, right? Which is a form of alchemy where you achieve heaven on earth. Achieve heaven on earth, that's a fifth dimensional civilizations where you live among extraterrestrial entities, where you see apparitions, right? So this is why they got to hit you with full disclosure when it comes to everything in the media. I'm going to play the video.
And your first question was if China or Russia. If Russia owned it, they wouldn't be battling in Ukraine. It'd be over. Putin's ego, it wouldn't have happened. China, they would control us. Even they pretty much do now, but even more so. So that goes back to my original premise. It's either something that's extraterrestrial or something that we have in our skunk works that we are reverse engineering.
The last 5 weeks, we have continued to cover whatever it is that's happening in the skies all over the world. Mysterious drones now being reported over parts of 50 states and in countries across the globe. And if you followed this story even just a little bit, you'll realize that what people are seeing and recording, this is not stuff that comes from this planet, and the complete silence on this topic from our government has only added fuel to the many theories that are now circulating right now on the internet. Dr. Stephen Greer is back with us. He's the founder of the Disclosure Project. Dr. Greer has been consistent with us for weeks that there is a disclosure coming before the presidential inauguration, which now leaves us with 10 days. Dr. Greer, it's great to have you back. This is where we are right now. A flight crew on a commercial airplane recorded this large orb in the skies while they were at 17,000 feet. And now people, we mentioned this a week ago, are reportedly getting sick all over the world from this granular, mysterious fog that's being seen all over the place. Right. Does this disclosure happen next week? And if it does, how does it happen? When it starts happening, how will we know?
Well, it'll be all over the news. It's good to see you again. I just heard about an hour ago from we call the NOC, he's a non-official cover aerospace intelligence community, a senior operator from one of the key two black sites out in the western United States. And they are preparing to do this next week. I don't have an exact date. They intend to not only provide their testimony of operations, he's been there almost 30 years, but also the evidence and other details. Now, he's been involved in two things. One is the testing and the surveillance of the man-made UAPs that have been manufactured out of the Lockheed Skunk Works and Northrop Grumman complexes out in the high desert. Okay. The other is the targeting of non-human craft. Some would say extraterrestrial, some say alien. The words they're using now is NHI, non-human intelligence, and the downing of those objects.
You notice what he said? He said NHI, which is non-human intelligence. So, like I said, they putting it right in your face. They let you know what time it is because they got to give you the truth, right? Because we just went through the year of karma. Year 2024 was based on karmic retribution. The year of 9 represents, rebirth, reset, right? Rebirth and reset and finality of a system. This is why you're seeing everything that's taking place in California that's in alignment with the chakra point of planet Earth when you're talking about Mount Shasta. All this stuff, because the chakra points of planet Earth is correlated with the black sun, which is Ophiuchus, which is also known as Jesus walking on water, as it goes up the Nile, which is equated to your spine. And it goes up and it sits at the 33rd vertebrae and it goes into the third and fourth ventricle of the brain and activates the hypothalamus gland and the pituitary gland, and to where you activate the Christ consciousness, because God is the highest extension of the mind, which uses the elements and matter to express itself. So that's why they got to reset everything. They got to reset and give you full disclosure, right? Because they understand that we are activating our neurological faculties by connecting with the planets and the celestial alignments, right? Because like I said, the planetary alignments, all these planets basically corresponds with our body, right? Because it enhances the flow of cosmic energy, right? So that's why, like I said, because eventually, if you contain a certain sorry about that, but if you contain a certain neurological faculties, like I said, you can achieve, the status of becoming an extraterrestrial entity by way of the upgrading of your genetics, because we was all talking about, the neuroendocrine transducer and how when you activate certain parts of yourself, right, and it unlocks the scroll of all, that's when you're able to tap into certain abilities. So some of us that is connected to that ancient, indigenous bloodline, a lot of us is going to be turned on and we're going to be perceived as extraterrestrial entities, right? So that's why they got to give you full disclosure about it, because they're not going to tell you that your genetics is going to upgrade to where you're going to basically become, a supreme being. So they got to get you with the semantics in the media by telling you about full disclosure. That's what this is all about.
So he's been intimately involved. I've been at his facility, and that is on track. Now, keep in mind, so much of what is being seen now is sort of a decoy false operation, sort of trying to intercept what he's going to be doing and what we've been doing for some time.
But there's no way, Dr. Greer, we've talked about, there's no way all of this can be a false. It's all over the world now. It's being seen over cities in India, cities in South Korea. It's just the coordination that would be required to do something like that. I think it's beyond the scope unless there is something.
Montana. Sometime in the evening hours on March 24th, I received a call from one of my topside guards, the flight security controller, stating that they had been observing strange lights in the sky making odd maneuvers. He called back about 5 minutes later. This time he was screaming into the phone saying they're looking at an object, a red glowing object hovering just above our front gate. I went to wake my commander, Fred Mywald, who was taking a rest break, started to tell him about the phone call, and just as I told him, our missiles began going into what's called a no-go condition or unlaunchable. Essentially, they were disabled.
Are aliens already here? Yes or no?
Oh, sure. I mean, there have been non-human extraterrestrial civilizations that have been observing the planet for thousands of years, and it increased remarkably once we detonated the first atomic bomb.
Pay attention to what he said. He said thousands of years.
Observing the planet for thousands of years, and it. Oh, sure. I mean, there have been non-human extraterrestrial civilizations that have been observing the planet for thousands of years, and it increased remarkably once we detonated the first atomic bomb. There's no question about that. In fact, this particular team coming forward have dealt with the remains and on occasion living non-human life forms that have been downed, and some are still in captivity in subterranean facilities or STIFs.
To me, Dr. Greer, feels like, and you answered my other question, it feels like right now the public worldwide is being primed for something. For the last 50 years, we've had movies about aliens. Going back to Roswell, we've had reports of flying saucers. And now people, not just in North.
Like I said, he said the last 50 years they've been showing you in the movies, right? Because the perception of art imitates reality. So if you see it enough, it's going to embark upon your reality over time. So they got to give you the knowledge about all these entities in the movies, but it's up to you to have the mental and the spiritual fortitude to understand that this is entertainment, right? I mean, to understand it's not entertainment. This is actually real life, but they got to give it to you in a form of entertainment, because the CIA has an office in Hollywood and Hollywood has an office in the CIA. They already know this stuff, right? And the CIA, speaking of the CIA, which is also connected to Greenland, that's where they're actually stationed at. They're stationed in Greenland and Switzerland, right? Those are the two headquarter places, not in the United States like they tell you. It's in Switzerland and Greenland, which is why Donald Trump wants to turn everything into a police state and why he wants Greenland so bad. It's all correlated to the Greenland theory.
In New Jersey are seeing strange things in the sky. It seems like these beings are technologically far superior than we are, and they're doing this with incredible patience, priming a worldwide audience for something else. Do you agree with that? And then what are they priming us for?
Well, it's very complex, but the bottom line it is they've been waiting for humans to acknowledge their presence so that they don't have to force into it, which could look aggressive, because they're not aggressive, obviously.
Force into it like land in
advance.
Times Square, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to do something like that. They're going to do a sort of an acculturation and desensitization operation.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Which means it's gradual.
Okay.
And it has been over the decades. Now, the big problem here are rogue military industrial complex operations that have reverse engineered these extremely advanced technologies.
Ever struggled to get a credit card when you have poor or no credit? Then you need Self. Simply download the app
and can use them in staged event. And this is where everyone, when I say everyone, I mean everyone from the generals that I have briefed at the Pentagon to director of the CIA, past, not incoming. And that is that they greatly underestimate what has been developed. I mean, Ben Rich, before he died, who was head of Lockheed Skunk Works, said, anything you can imagine, as you've seen on Star Trek, we've already figured out, and it's out there in the desert. He says, not Area 51.
Okay.
Talking about
how far ahead of us? And the last time you were on, you said there are multiple different alien societies from different planets visiting us.
Right.
How far ahead of us are they?
At least 60 to 70 that have been documented, and the development of very powerful
If they
weapons.
landed, Dr. Greer, could they communicate with us?
I'm sure they can. I mean, I don't know how that would exactly take place. It may be some strange. I mean, remember, one of the things that Elon Musk is working on at Neuralink is an interface between thought and machine.
Right, right.
Now, I will tell you, this is a big secret that's going to come out very quickly with this team, because they've dealt with this, is that there is a direct interface between technology and consciousness and thought that's been developed by these advanced civilizations. This is not Ma Bell we're talking about here in terms of communication. So it's that's just a prelude. We don't have time to unpack that, but I know about that in a very specialized fashion.
Does Donald Trump need to appoint somebody like yourself as an alien czar or a UAP czar?
Well, this has been suggested. We'll see. I mean, of course, the president, you serve at his pleasure. As it is, I've been an unofficial advisor for many administrations on this. And now that this is going to be coming to a head, we'll see if he wants someone to do that. If I would certainly consider it if I was asked, but that has not happened.
Dr. Greer, I'm interested to see what's really going on out there. We've got 10 days before the inauguration.
As soon as this drops and we get this from this team, we'll send it over to you.
All right. Dr. Stephen Greer, have a great weekend. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it, as always.
And your first question was if...
Now, speaking of everything he was talking about, like, the inauguration is on its way because, like I said, the deep state shadow government, they're going to do everything in their power to create these black swan events. So something may take place before the inauguration or during, right? So now we're going to get back to the presentation at hand before I show you guys some other stuff. So now this is where we get into the Greenland theory, right? So you got make Greenland great again. Trump's GOP allies unveil bill to authorize country's purchase. Now, why Trump wants Greenland and what makes it a strategic polar outpost. So I'm going to play this other video that's basically talking about how Donald Trump wants Greenland. And then we're going to get into the Greenland theory because it basically correlates to the planetary alignments. And that planetary alignment is in alignment with the Golden Gate, which is also known as Olympus, because there is a mountain which is known as the Rupus Negra, which is also correlated to the mythology of Mount Olympus. When you're talking about the home and the headquarters of the Archons that sits magnetic north in the land of magnets, which is also known in many different terminologies or different nomenclatures. So I'm going to play this video for a second. Play this other video for you guys talking about Donald Trump and how he's trying to galvanize Greenland for the New World Order. I told you that Donald Trump is not your savior. He is not your savior, right? I showed you in the last video. When you break down the etymology in ancient Kemet, when you break down the etymology of the word MAGA, you will find out that he set sun, right? Which is a demonic entity. So I'm gonna play this video.
Estate tycoon. So he's testing the waters. He's flexing his muscle. He's just seeing what's possible out there and trying to find out the new contours of the new world order.
Before he's even in office, President-elect Trump flirting with the idea of using the military to take over foreign lands, including the autonomous Danish territory of Greenland.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
Donald Trump plotting MAGA global domination. The president-elect holding his second news conference at Mar-a-Lago since wiping the floor with the Dems back in November. Harold.
Ønsket om selvstændighed, ønsket om at være her i eget hus, at der nok forstå det for alle folk, der er i verden. Og den kamp fra Grønlands side har jo aldrig været nyt. Udviklet sig den vej i rigtig mange år, i hvert fald i mange årtier. Vi vil ikke være danskere, vi vil ikke være amerikanere, vi vil selvfølgelig være grønlændere. Og selvfølgelig er det den grønlandske folk, som bestemmer deres fremtid. Det tror jeg, der er en fælles forståelse for. Og at bygge frem til det, er også det, som alle burde have respekt for. Og selvfølgelig er mange ting, som der foregår i verden. Det er en foranderlig verden. For 3-4 år siden har vi nok ikke troet, at vi var her. Og de problemstillinger, vi har i dag, ikke var kældende.
And the president-elect's plan to make Canada part of the U.S. may be a tough sell too.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security.
One other Trump idea that may soon make some headway on Capitol Hill, renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
Canada and the United States, that would really be.
Now, for those of you, who venerate Donald Trump so much to the point where you think that he's a catalyst and a beacon of light for humanity, you cannot negate the fact that he's trying to mobilize these United Nations factions that's connected to, the deep state shadow government and, the whole principles of the New World Order systems. He's basically trying to bring everybody together in a form of, religion, in a form of, geopolitical and societal resets and how it applies to the economy. He is basically trying to construct that and use his status and his power in order to propagate that ideology to the masses in the media. So like I said, Donald Trump is not, he's a chess piece. He's a chess piece for a totalitarian regime to turn the planet into a police state that is operated by way of artificial intelligence. That's why, Elon Musk, he's eventually going to be in control of all social media websites, right? Remember I said this. Elon Musk is eventually going to be in control of all social media websites, right? Because it's going to work in tandem with the universal basic income, because that's where you're going to be able to make your money at now. You're not going to be able to go to work because it's going to be used by the machines. So that means that you're going to have to be able to galvanize an audience or make some type of money online to where they keep you inside the house. This is why they want to build the 15-minute smart cities, right? This is all correlated. They try to find a way to keep your ass in the house, because when you're outside, it enhances the flow of cosmic energy, especially if you got this carbon coating skin, right, that connects with the energy of the universe, right?
Something.
To which the outgoing Canadian Prime Minister responded, there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. But the territorial ambitions didn't end there, Donald Trump revealing plans to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
Trump also twisting Canada's arm for a merger with the U.S. And he wants to give the Gulf of Mexico a new name.
We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring.
Your references to Greenland and the Panama Canal, so forth. Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No. We need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. But we need Greenland for national security purposes.
Are you also considering military force to annex?
Talk about he need Greenland for national security purposes, right? I told you that's the headquarters of the deep state is actually in Greenland. It's not in Switzerland. They control everything through Switzerland, but the headquarters is in Greenland, right? And I'm gonna prove it to you.
No, economic force, because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security.
Greenland in relation to the Arctic. You can see the importance of it. There's the Arctic Circle. And so the nations that border the Arctic Circle are Greenland, Canada.
Now, when you look at a Mercator map, where you see the Arctic Circle right here, that's where you have magnetic north. Magnetic north is where you have the Rupus nigra. Rupus nigra equates to black rock, or Black Pyramid, or whatever you want to call it. And it's also known as the land of magnets. So that's why it's also correlated with Greenland in the Greenland theory in Canada, right?
United States through Alaska and Russia, and then, of course, some of the Scandinavian states of Europe. It's becoming a much more sensitive area, partly because the famous Northwest Passage, which has been closed for the whole of human history by Arctic ice, is now beginning to open up because of global warming. And that Northwest Passage moves that way round. So that's important. Then, too, there are all of the minerals in Greenland, so it's a big issue. If the Greenlanders want independence, which they do, it is possible that the United States might try to subsidize that independence in return for some privileges in security and economic terms. Denmark won't like it, but some people in Washington and maybe in Nuuk, the capital of Greenland, are beginning to think that way.
Because I think this is strange what he's doing. But I think in the most favorable light, as he's talking about the Gulf of America or talking about Canada and Greenland, I want to think he's trying to send a message to President Xi saying, look, if you're talking about Taiwan to the Russians, if you're going to invade Ukraine, then we can do this perhaps by using economic sanctions. I think that the other way to look at it, which I think some people will, people who are versed in foreign policy will say, it's almost the equivalent in some ways of saying if you're going to cross, when the president said there's an artificial line separating us and Canada, it sounds a lot like what Putin talked about with Ukraine. Can you imagine if the Chinese said, Lower Manhattan is Chinatown, so we'll just annex that because there are a lot of Chinese there and they speak our language there, or in Little Italy. We're going to take Italians. We're going to take Little Italy because there are a lot of Italian. It's silly.
But with war raging in Gaza, a fragile peace in Lebanon, and instability in Syria, his remarks on the Middle East will cause real alarm.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas. And it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is.
He vowed to take control of...
Like I said, this is how you know they working together. Because remember in the last video I showed you that at Jimmy Carter's funeral, you had Obama sitting right next to Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump, he's talking about he's going after Hamas. Hamas is known as a deep state entity. It's a deep state faction that is connected to, the oligarchs that control everything within the factions of our reality. So if he's going after, how are you going to go after yourself, right? So that's how you know they're gonna use him as a chess piece, as a catalyst to create chaos, right? To create this reset, right? Because we all know that Hamas is connected to the deep state, and Obama is connected to the deep state, and he was seen talking to Obama at Jimmy Carter's funeral. So if you're really trying to drain the swamp, why are you politicking with the deep state? Hello? That's why I said it's time to wake up. Like I said, once again, Illuminati, I'm on to you. I'm going to find out y'all tricks. I'm going to find out every time.
Greenland, where Don Jr. touched down earlier and spoke to his father by phone.
The welcome was spectacular. It's pretty amazing.
Well, that's great. Well, you go have a good time, everybody, and we're going to treat you well, and you know that, and just take care of yourself.
The president-elect is refusing to rule out military or economic coercion in his pursuit of Greenland and the Panama Canal.
I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military.
Greenland is a territory of Denmark, not Norway. As for using coercive means of acquiring it,
oh, heck no.
Okay.
Heck no. No, absolutely not. I think he's enjoying trolling people on these issues. He does that quite a bit.
With a war already raging in Europe, his critics say it's not something to take lightly.
We do not invade other countries for territory. We haven't done that in over a century, and we shouldn't start now. The way to get access to rare minerals is through diplomacy, through trade deals.
Trump says he also wants the U.S. to take over the Panama Canal and Canada. We'll soon see if his words motivate partners and allies to work with him on issues like trade or push them away.
To the president, I'll make him a counteroffer. How about if we buy Alaska and we'll throw in Minnesota and Minneapolis at the same time?
Hey, Donald, have we got a deal for you? You think we want to be the 51st state? Nah, but maybe California would like to be the 11th province. How about it? California, Oregon, Washington?
I think I saw her in an insurance commercial. So, Jesse, okay, this renaming stuff, it's largely symbolic, but at least he's renaming something on behalf of America. When the Dems rename things, whether it's Columbus Day or schools, it's to reduce America's patriotism. It's like, we can't name it after a president. We can't name it after Christopher Columbus. We have to denigrate America. He's saying, Gulf of Mexico? Nah. Gulf of America.
And how are you going to disagree with that?
Yeah.
You can't. So you're going to come out against America? What are you, for the Mexicans? I think the grand strategy is create a North American trade, energy, and security network that gets the best terms for us. Now, I looked into Greenland.
No, you didn't.
I did. So the pros of Greenland are a lot of minerals, great. You could project a lot of force to counter Russia through there.
You know, another reason why they want Greenland, because they have anthracite coal. Anthracite coal, you can give power to a whole civilizations for like 500 years without no type of electrical, no type of technology being used. It's basically free energy. There's a lot of free energy minerals in Greenland and at the Arctic Circle, right? Because I told you, the Arctic Circle, where the Rupus Negra is basically located at, when you look at a Mercator on the map, it shows you that it's basically the land of magnets, where you get the magnetism of the planet at, right? Which is where the Black Rock, or whatever you want to call it, is located at. I'm going to break it down once we get through the video.
And one Democrat lawmaker says that he's open to hearing the idea out. Here's Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman.
I would never support taking it by force, but I do think it's a responsible conversation if they were open to acquiring it, and whether just buying it outright. I mean, if anyone think that's bonkers, it's like, well, remember the Louisiana Purchase? Well, I think Alaska was a great deal too. $50 million, open to having all kinds of conversations as well. And now I don't think it's not helpful to freak out, but some things might work out, some may not. But that's part of an ongoing dialogue.
Now, back to the presentation at hand. We're going to get back to these slides, because everything I'm showing you guys today is all based on prophetic divination and is part of the eschatological timeline. You got to understand that. You got to understand it now. This is all correlated and associated with the Greenland theory, Apocalypse Now, written by David Chase Taylor. Now, this basically denotes the fact that the head of the Roman occupational government is basically in Greenland, right? It's basically in Greenland, which is why Donald Trump wants to merge Greenland with the United States. Now, this is also connected to the publication of the Greenland theory, Apocalypse Now, that was written in 2014. It basically explores the unrecognized but mighty conspiracy which has been hidden from humanity for ages. Briefly, the Roman Empire, commonly referred to as ancient Rome, evidently faked its own death 720 years ago, and now excerpts command control over 206 nations of the world through primary proxy state Switzerland, home of the CIA, which is coincidentally formed in 1300 AD, approximately 720 years ago. the alleged fall of the Roman Empire and the notion that Greenland is mostly covered in ice and snow are both colossal hoaxes perpetuated unto the world in order for Rome to collectively deceive and survive her enemies of the day, which is basically comprised of Persia and all these other things. So this is, this is all connected. Now I'm gonna tell you how it's all connected to Greenland, because when you look at a Mercator map, it shows you the Rupes Nigra, which is black rock, right? Negra, which is equated to Negro or the N word, right? Which is a phantom island, was believed to be a black rock located at magnetic north, where Greenland is located, or geographic North Pole, which is also known as the land of magnets, right? So what you're seeing right here, there's an island right here. There's supposed to be some type of black rock or black pyramid called the Rupes Nigra that sits at the Arctic Circle, which is kind of connected to Greenland, right? So there's a TV show that came out a long time ago called The Twin Peaks. Because one thing you got to understand about a Twin Peak mountain is basically aligned with the Rupes Nigra. So in the show that was basically projected in the 1990s, is basically produced by Paramount, that also shows the Twin Peak mountains of the Rupes Nigra, right? Which is also known as the realm of the gods, or the realm of Olympus, right? Which is also known as the mental plane. So the Rupes Nigra, when you look at the Paramount, because the Twin Peaks movie or the TV show was produced by Paramount. So that essentially means, that Paramount, or the Rupes Nigra at the Arctic Circle, is connected to the whole philosophy of the 200 fallen angels, right? So that's what these stars represent. They represent the fallen angels, right? So the Twin Peak Mountain, and when you study the Rosicrucian order, and they said that you can only see this mountain at a certain visible light spectrum during a certain time of day. It's an invisible mountain, meaning that, like I said, it's connected to the magnum opus, which is also known as the great work. The great work, which is basically a form of alchemy. Alchemy meaning that other dimensional realities basically exist. So these dimensional realities that's connected to Greenland is connected to the Arctic Circle at the Rupes Nigra, right? So you looking at the logo of the Paramount picture, starts off with 22 stars falling and coming down to the mountain. The stars represent the Watcher Angels, which is known as the Luciferian Anunnaki, and the mount represents Mount Hermon or Mount Rupes, or the Rupes Nigra, which is known as the Black Rock that sits at the land of magnets. The mountain landed with why 22 stars, because 22 of the angels are named after the ones in the book of Enoch, right? And they made a pact. They made a brief in the covenant with humanity to create abominations, right? So that's why it's not a coincidence that the Pope used these keys to unlock the portals, right? Because these portals unlock the Golden Gate. The Golden Gate is Olympus, which is the realm of the gods. The realm of the gods is associated with the Arctic Circle, where you have the Rupes Nigra, right? That could be the place where the Luciferian Anunnaki is located, right? Because I was telling you, this is all connected to Greenland and Antarctica, because I was showing you the sigil system of the no-fly zone in Antarctica creates the sigil of Lucifer, right? So that corresponds with everything I was telling you that about the Luciferian Anunnaki, the 200 fallen ones. So that could be the Arctic Circle, could be whether you're talking about the Paramount, the Black Rock, or the Black Pyramid, right? The Rupes Nigra. How you know that this is not located, this is not the headquarters of the Archons, right? Who were stationed there for 72 trillion years. And the keys that the Pope used was to unlock the bottomless pit, right? To get to the Golden Gate. These keys right here that you see on the doorways of Rome, the holy doors that he opened up. These keys that sit at the top, the same keys that I've been telling you about, the silver key and the golden key. Aries and Libra, right? That's just how, this is how everything is basically esoterically connected. You got to start looking at stuff from an esoteric level. You can't be looking at certain stuff like how Christians and people stuck in religion, they see certain stuff and they take it for face value, and they forget how the planets is in correspondence with the body. And it's also is basically talking about alchemy and the upgrading of genetics. That's what the Bible is basically talking about, right? You got to look at this from a esoteric standpoint, not an exoteric standpoint, right? So now this is all correlated to the fact that the Rosicrucian Order and other secret societies knew about the Magic Mountain. They knew about the Invisible Mountain, right? Because it's connected to the Prior of Zion, which is basically a branch of the Knights of Templar. And the Knights of Templar, they knew about this magical mountain that operated on a certain visible light spectrum during a certain time of the day, during a time of reset, which is at 12 p.m., to where you can see this mountain or this pyramid or this black rock, right? That is associated with Greenland. Now, one thing you got to understand about this black rock is that when you're talking about from a biblical context standpoint, we all know that the chosen ones of the Bible are basically the Semitic people. And the Semitic people of the Bible are the ones who have the genes that have the ability to unlock the portals in order to see the visible light spectrum of the hidden mountain that sits magnetic north in the Arctic Circle. When you're talking about the Rupus nigra, we're the only ones that can basically see it because we have the neuromelanin, which is basically the brain and central nervous system melanin that activates the scroll of all within you, right? Which is basically activated by a melanocyte, which is an intelligence molecule. So you have to have a certain genome in order to see the realm of the gods. So that is not acclimated to mankind because mankind is a kind of a man that was genetically spliced in 4086 BC on the island of Patmos. They don't have the genetics because their genetics and who they are and what they represent is connected to Babylon, so they don't have access to the gateway. So if you're connected to the energy of Babylon, which is connected to the demiurge that's comprised of the lower fourth dimension and the third dimension, if you have a veneration for that principle, you have a veneration for that hedonistic activity, you don't get access to the realm of the gods. Now this doesn't really correlate with the video, but it correlates with the last video I put out. Now, it's not a coincidence that the places where they had the fires is also connected to the railroad system that took place, right? So that's why the fires, the places where the fires basically took place at, that's where they're going to have the 15-minute smart cities. And the 15-minute smart cities, they need an importing and exporting of goods that's connected to the railroad system. That's one thing you got to understand about that. So it was not a coincidence that that was a psychological operation that was perpetuated by the deep state shadow government. So then you also got scientists found signs of a hidden structure inside Earth's core. So that coincides with hollow Earth. When you're talking about, Shambhala, when you break down the etymology, it means the scent of Allah. And then you got the Crystal City. You got all the Rainbow City, all these subterranean kingdoms that's inside the core of the earth. So this is why they got to give you full disclosure about extraterrestrials, because you're having the spiritual plane merging with the physical plane square in a circle where you get order out of chaos, right? So this is why TikTok plans to shut down by January 19th, right? Right before you have the planetary alignment that basically refracts the energies of the lunar waves that's connected to the 7 planets that creates the gate of the souls of man, which is the gate of the gods. So these energies, coming in is going to display a certain truth, and they don't want that truth to go on TikTok, right? So that's why Elon Musk, he's going to eventually buy. He's going to be in control of all social media platforms, because when he's in control, that basically is connected to the cybernetic dictatorship, because they can control everybody by way of the social media, because that's how you're going to be making your money in the future. That's why he said nobody's basically going to have jobs, because it works in tandem with the sustainable development goals for Agenda for 2030. They don't want people working. This is why they want the rise of artificial intelligence, right? Because I was telling you that artificial intelligence and all technological radiation extracts neurons from the body and it uploads into a neuromorphic cyber cloud, to where AI mimics the energy of humans, right? So that's why everything is going to be in a form of control, even the social media. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give a brief synopsis and a rundown about the Gate of the Gods, right? Because the Gate of the Gods is activated by the Silver Key and the Golden Key. The Silver Key and the Golden Key are basically talking about two different planetary alignments. You're going to have one on January and you're going to have another one on February. And that's going to unlock the Golden Gate. The Golden Gate is basically acclimated to who you are neurologically when you're talking about the restoration of the limbic system that is connected to the hypothalamus gland that merges in, that creates the regeneration spinal fire of the energy of Ophiuchus, which is a representation of Christ. So that Christ energy is also acclimated to the parade of planets, which is 6 and 7. When you get 13, 13 is connected to the 13 zodiac wheel of Ophiuchus. And when you look at the central system of Ophiuchus, it represents a serpent, and the serpent is connected to the Kundalini serpentine fire that activates the non-ether, right? So that's why it's in conjunction with the 7 planets, because the 7 planets correspond with the 7 chakra systems that get you in alignment to receive these energies. So when you're able to receive these energies, you unlock your scroll of all, the 7 tablets of destiny that is connected to Libra and Aries, right? To where it connects you to the space-time continuum of the galactical plane or the galactic center that sits where the Milky Way is. So that's what this is all about, right? It's all about 5th dimensional ascension as you have 3rd density being eradicated, because you got the constitution of the 7 principles of the universal substance of man that works in conjunction with the 7 gates of consciousness of God within you, right? Which is the energy of Ophiuchus, the serpent that creates 0-point energy. That's what this is all about, to break out of the soul lure system of the energy of the moon. You got to break out of that realm, right? You got to break out of the matrix. This is all corresponding with Greenland and the Greenland theory. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'll talk to you guys for a second. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I told y'all about California a long time ago. I told y'all a month before the fires happened in the 7 Thunders video to get out of California. I've been telling y'all about the planes. You can go and look at the great majority of my videos in the past, 9-6 months or whatever. I'm telling y'all to get out of California. I'm telling y'all to stay off the airplanes. I'm telling y'all what time it is and how it corresponds with certain planetary alignments and how it's in alignment with our genetics. That's what this is all about. They're trying to create another mechanism to usher in a form of a light code lockdown with artificial intelligence, right? That's why Donald Trump works with Elon Musk. Elon Musk, he wants to control all social media, and Donald Trump, he wants to control all geographical land masses because it creates the geopolitical economic reset. He is resetting everything to where he controls all land masses, and Elon Musk is going to control and reset all social media because it's going to correlate to the one world order system, right? Or the new world order system. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen,
10-14. We will put it